Hi everybody, I'm Matt Welk, and I'm here to talk to you about from jam to resume tips and tips for jamming with a purpose. I've looked at lots of resumes and I've done lots of game jams, and I'm going to teach you how to combine those things so you can do a jam this weekend and put it into an excellent entry on your resume to get a job later. So we're going to talk about goals, games, and resumes. So part one is goals. People come to a game jam for a variety of reasons, and I'm going to read some off for you. So it could be, I want to learn networked multiplayer. Ambitious, but you can do that in the game jam. I want to learn Godot. That's a great time. I want something I can build on after the jam. Some people want to have a starter here. I want a new piece for my art portfolio. I want to just hang out and make some background assets for a day. Or I want to get something polished, small, complete, and published on itch.io with my name on it, and that's usually one of my goals. I try to always ship something at the end, so I have that always in mind. Now, people can come to a jam with a whole bunch of different motivations and goals, but you can still work together to make something coherent. It just takes a bit of negotiation and planning. So I encourage you at the start of your jam to sit down with everybody and be like, what is your goal for this weekend? And it could be one of those, or it could be something totally different. So here are some examples of making that work. If someone's only going to be there one day, give them a low priority task, something that would add polish to the game, but if they're not there the next day to finish it up, it's okay. Someone wants to make the hero object of a game for a portfolio piece, that's fine. Make sure they get an early version working in the game on the Saturday probably, so you know the pipeline works, and then you can relax and you can let them iterate on that hero object as much as they want. You know the pipeline's working. Third, network multiplayer. Oh, have a backup plan. Like if it doesn't work by like noon on Saturday or something, we're gonna get a second controller and figure it out. Okay, part two is examples. So I'm going to go over two examples where I'll say what the goals were for the jam, what the result of the jam was, and how I would write that on a resume. The first one is a game called A Spring's Journey, and I had two goals. I wanted to make a game by myself. I didn't want to depend on anybody else or have anyone depend on me, because I just had pockets of time on a weekend. And because there was the Unreal Engine 4 jam, I really wanted to submit something and get my name out there in that jam. And so little pockets of time on a weekend by myself. That was the scope of it. And here's what that looks like. You are a spring. Your joystick angles you, and then your right trigger compresses and expands the spring, and that's how you move around. And it's very simple. There's this one level. There are optional star collectibles. You can see one up there. And then at the very top is the final goal, which I'll show you in a moment. And so I made the assets for it. There's no sound, there's no music. And so here you can see at the very top, there's that pen. The fiction of the game is you're a spring that fell out of a pen, and so you need to get, we've all had it happen, you need to get reunited with your pen. Yeah, so that's the scope of it. So let's talk about resumes for a moment. Your resumes have to be true. They have to be things that are not untrue, things that are not exaggerated, or things that are not misleading. Because if you're like, oh, I'll just stretch the truth a little bit. Oh, I won't mention that I was one of 5 people working on this feature. In an interview, they'll sniff it out. It'll be stinky. You'll have a big old stink. So it's got to be true and clear. So you don't have to feel like you need to exaggerate to be noticed, though. It just has to be written in a way that makes it clear based on what the reviewer is looking for, so like what the job is that you're applying for. So make sure to include what are the tools you used that are relevant for the job you're applying for, what you built with each tool, and what your specific, your responsibilities were for the thing you were working on. So let's go back to A Spring's Journey and look at a bad example. This says, A Spring's Journey, April 2017, game where you are a spring named Springy, and your goal is to reunite with the pen you fell out of, available on itch.io. Don't do this. I don't know what tools I used. I don't know how big the project was. I don't know what my role was. It is on itch.io. You can go there and type in a Springs journey and you'll find it, but at least have the whole URL and make it clickable. People very rarely print out a resume. They're probably looking at it on a computer, and they can click the links in your resume. You can make them hyperlinks. Everything's a web page. So I don't know what my responsibilities were or those other 2 bits. So let's look at a full example here. This is our starting point. I'll read it for you. It says, Game Jam, we're setting the scope, a Springs journey, April 2017, implemented a novel 3D locomotion system in Unreal 4 blueprints. So that line right there, it has what's the tool, what was I working on, the locomotion system, and it tells you this is a 3D game, we're navigating a 3D environment. Second line, created a simple composable set of 3D assets in Blender. We'll talk about that later. Used blend shapes to animate the main spring-like character in a physically convincing way. I say spring-like because it is actually a spring, but they're going to wonder what spring means. Did level design for 1 level with a clear goal and optional collectibles of variable difficulty. And then total development time 6 hours. Normally you wouldn't put that in, but that's normally you take more time for a game jam. And then received an honorable mention in the game jam. So if you got an award, absolutely it needs to be in your resume. So that's a great base. But now let's see what it looks like to massage it if I'm applying for different positions. Because I did everything in this game except sound. So if I'm applying for a gameplay programmer position, I'm bolding some keywords, novel 3D locomotion system. I want them to ask me about that in the interview. And I will be prepared to say, and I will refresh myself. It's 2017, that's a long time ago, but I'll refresh myself before the interview so I know what it is. I'll open the code again, I make sure it's fresh. In UE4 blueprints, I cut the line about making assets in Blender. Probably they don't care. And then I'm not bolding the middle bit, but it's nice to know that people understand other parts of game development as well, so might as well keep it in. And then I'm bolding the time and the honorable mention. Let's look at another one. If I was applying in an indie studio, probably I keep it all there, because if your studio is small enough, you probably have to wear a couple hats, or at least you'll have to be really familiar with the different disciplines, because you'll all be together and you will be working with people of other disciplines. So I've got it all in there. I just bolded some keywords, and again, you would change that based on who you're applying for. If they don't use Unreal Engine, don't bold it. If they don't use Blender, maybe not bold it. You can judge it based on the job application. And a third one, if you're applying for an art position, they probably don't care that I can program, so I cut the part about blueprints. I'm highlighting composable set of 3D assets because I want them to ask me about that. Like, what does composable mean for this game? Does it mean it hits certain metrics, so it's like units of 1 meter? Does it mean you can scale it 10 times the size and it still looks good? Does it mean they like lock together nicely? I want them to ask me that so I can answer those questions. Using blend shapes to animate, that's kind of novel. I want them to ask me why blend shapes and not keyframes. I want them to ask me that. And it shows that I'm thinking about how I'm making something, and I know to highlight, hey, this is a bit weird, so I'm bolding that on my resume. Also, if it's an art position, you should have something visual in it. I'm not an expert at looking at art resumes, but you should have something visual. So here's something visual. Those are all the things I made. There's a star, there's a pen, there's the shelves, the book, and the spring. Those are the 5 assets I made. You can see how they're composed. Some, like the books at the bottom left are like shrunk down, but they still look good. Things like that. And then I'm showing the visual flow of the level layout so that showing how I'm intending a player's eye to be directed to the optional star and to the pen at the top. Okay, example 2 of 2, and this one's short. This one is called Lucid Drifting Neon Nights, and I had a few goals coming into this one. One was I already had a basic drifting system. I've always wanted to make a drifting game, so I had that in my back pocket. So I said, let's get a game together, we'll turn it into a game, we'll polish it up, and we'll get it out, and I'll just collect every stray person at the jam, and we'll just make a group of 7 people. And so I know it's a group of 7. I'll basically be managing a team for the weekend, because once you have enough people, someone is just going to play manager for the weekend, and you have to accept that. That's fine. It's a necessary role. It's wonderful. We need people like that in the industry. It's wonderful. And I knew that. And other people had goals as well. It's 7 people. That's a lot of goals to manage. Examples, I want to hang out and make assets for the day. I want to do some sound effects. I want to make a pop song. I want to make a dope main menu. And I want to make a very nice car. So here's how that looked in the end. This is Lucid Drifting Neon Nights. 2-player game, local, not multiplayer. You can drift around. 1 button is go, 1 button is drift. You have a light trail with a nice dot pattern behind you. These collectibles pop up, and then the camera zooms so you can always see everything relevant on the screen. There it is. The score goes up. The art assets are all coherent, and that's the game. This is the main menu, the famed main menu that Ben Bergman made. It's a gear shifter. You literally do like right up to go enter game, and it's very satisfying. And then we'll see if there's sound for this. Ooh, yes, there is. This is the credit screen, and it is also a karaoke screen, because Daniel Bergman made a whole pop song in a week. He's like, I'm gonna make a pop song. So he did. He recorded the whole thing. It's in the game, and you can sing along. And so we had to put it in. Like, that goal it's not strictly a necessary part of the features of the game, but we're working with the goals of the team, and obviously we're going to put it in the game because that's incredible. How could you do that? So how would I put that on a resume? My specific role in this. So I'll just read this for you. So Game Jam, Lucid Drifting Neon Nights, November 2017. Led a team of 7 people for a 72-hour game jam. That's the scope. Using UE4, that's the tool. Mentored a team member in UE4 blueprints to implement an animated UI feature. Implemented a dynamic camera system to keep all objects of interest on a single screen. Again, I want them to ask me questions about that. Like, what algorithm did you use? Did you lerp it? Did you ease it? Led creative direction on the art style of the game, as well as audio and music. Designed and implemented a drifting system pre-jam, good to clarify, and the dynamic light trail system using world coordinates to align dot pattern. And that one you might be thinking, Matt, that's a lot of detail. That's like really in the guts. I want them to ask me about it. This is bait. Your resume is interview bait. That's what the thing is. So I want them to say, why world coordinates? What problem were you trying to solve? If you were making a different way, could you still solve that problem? They're going to ask things like that, and that's my bait. I want them to ask me that. And finally, managed team motivation by assigning tasks based on motivation, taking tedious tasks myself, and scheduling well. Yeah, that's it. That's all I've got for you. I will post these so you can look at those, and like after the jam, like you haven't started the jam yet. At the end, you can look at those and say, oh yeah, okay, here's the pattern, I'll put that in. Feel free to talk to me after speakers night. I'll be hanging around, and enjoy the jam. Thanks so much.